Check out the Comic Outlaw on YouTube. We will bring in all the cool comic book stories, hidden gems you may not know. And today we're doing a what if Wolverine had married Mariko. And I actually kind of covered this in that 4-part Wolverine series I actually did earlier. And they didn't get married. And this is the what if they actually had. A very fascinating story. And just to go over everything, Wolverine met this girl, fell in love with her. Her father was part of the Yakuza. He ended up killing him, and the family is kind of in an uproar right now. They've been in the Yakuza for many years, and Wolverine had kind of won her hand. Now they were kind of torn apart by this guy called Mastermind, Jason Wingate, for basically their own reasons. The Hellfire Club does work in mysterious ways. But anyways, it's just that little event never happened, and Wolverine had ended up marrying her. And yes, Wolverine is proud. He's happy. For the first time in his life, he's actually found a sense of peace, a sense of belonging in the real world, and not the violent beast inside of him that seemed to subside. And I love this part between Kurt and Peter. You know, they're eating sushi and they think it's disgusting, and Wolverine tells them to eat up because there's going to be squid eyes and a few other fun things later, and they just begin to panic. And Shadowcat is sad, that Wolverine's leaving, staying behind as they're leaving. And of course, Wolverine doesn't regret the choice that he made. But her family is part of the Yakuza, and there's an uproar right now, and Wolverine has to help. And he gets drawn into this war, this basic gang war, and Wolverine just goes and starts cleaning house, He goes wrecking stuff, he's in, just taking care of business. And Wolverine kind of becomes muscle for this group, as they try to pull themselves out of it, but in a lot of ways they can't. There's a lot of family ties, there's so many years and tradition in it, so Wolverine's just doing what he can to kind of keep the peace and kind of keep them not involved. But someone needs their contacts, someone needs their family resources, and someone is trying to work against them. But she brings in her half-brother, the Silver Samurai, and the Silver Samurai is kind of a mutant. He generates kind of energy through his sword, and he's not to be trusted. He's kind of a scumbag in a lot of ways, but he pledges his loyalty, and here we go. Wolverine right out the bat just doesn't trust him, but the Silver Samurai does pledge his honor to her and to the family, and they need all the help they can get at this point. Every soldier in a war, Wolverine still is very suspicious of him. The Silver Samurai brings a card from the man that wants to talk to him, the new Yakuza boss, and Wolverine's eyes bulge as he finds out who it is. And Wolverine must have a meeting with this man, the man in the darkness, the hidden boss. And as Wolverine begins to sneak onto the compound, he does summon the Hand. And if you've seen my last videos, you know that these guys are efficient killers, they're warriors, but they just don't measure up to Wolverine, who's just a combat killing machine, and he just rips his way right through him. No pity, no mercy. It's just what Wolverine does. He's the best at what he does, and what he does is very nice. And he just shreds his way through him. And he begins to scale the wall, after he burns their ashes down. And he wants to just have a quick meeting with this guy, figure out what's going on, and probably try to intimidate him into just leaving the family alone. Well, believe me, this man will not be intimidated. His name is Wilson Fisk, if you guys don't know, the Kingpin himself, the Kingpin of crime, and he's decided to relocate over here for a short time. Business is doing good, and the Kingpin would like to profit from it more, and he needs the contacts from Wolverine's family in order to expand his empire to the point where he can basically take over. And Wolverine's basically telling him it's not going to happen. And a war of words ensue, and neither one is intimidated by the other. They both have a hand in so many dirty things, it's just ridiculous. And of course, they find another way to settle it. An honorable way, quote unquote. A fight. A challenge. For the right to lead this clan. And of course, this challenge does come later, but first, the inevitable war. And this is what kind of happens. There's always a war, and then there's always a challenge. And of course, it's a very costly war for Wilson Fisk, because Wolverine, Silver Samurai, and Mariko at this time are just so good. And with the addition of Sunfire, the fight does kind of start to turn on their tides. And of course, Wilson Fisk, like I said before, very smart man, decides to go with the challenge. This kind of has that old Chinese movie motif, you know what I mean? So it's sort of predictable on how things go down. Of course, he lays out the challenge. Wolverine accepts. You know, he has no choice but to accept. His honor's on the line. And I do love that trope. I do love me a good action ninja movie, so yeah, yeah. And of course, Wilson Fisk shows up just to the nines. You know, he's the kingpin. Almost a golden, like, armor, you know. It looks gold, but it's probably not. And he's just ready to do battle. And he tells him to send Sunfire away. You know, it's an unfair advantage. And they get this fight on. Now remember, Kingpin is no fat slouch. This man has been trained in sumo. This man has been trained in different combats. He knows how to fight. He's strong. He could take Spider-Man on and whoop his butt with a punch. So he's not to be underestimated. And of course, the battle does go back and forth. It gets bloody. It gets fierce. Like I said, Kingpin is not somebody to mess with, but neither is Wolverine. And of course, Kingpin gets his devastating shot off to the back. While still bleeding, you know, Wolverine disarms him, but Kingpin always has a trick up his sleeve, gives a signal, and betrays the contest by having a Silver Samurai, her own half-brother, kill Mariko, and she dies with a knife in her back from her very own brother. Wolverine, enraged, beats him to the dirt, grabs the family sword that had been their family for 1,000 years, slams it to his face, and says he won't damage the reputation of such a pure blade, but his claws on the other hand. Silver Samurai is dead. And of course the Kingpin explains he got what he wanted by her death, and his death he's going to be able to take over the family and basically spread his influence. But all great plans of mice and men, and even kingpins, do come to an end from a fiery blast from Sunfire, who snuck back into the contest to make sure it was on the up and up, but sadly he showed up too late, but he was able to at least get his revenge. Sunfire tries to give him the sword, but Wolverine gives it back and tells him to run the clan and take care of the family, and he leaves and returns to the X-Mansion, and of course leaving his heart, part of his soul, his existence as a man, as a warrior, lost somewhere in Japan. And that is our story, and as always, I'll catch you on the flip side. Laters.